Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 113, I chat with Kevin Miller about the flat panel Faceoff he conducted and which was the winner. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded May 28th, 2012. Episode 113, Flat Panel Face-Off. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the online editor of HomeTheater.com. This week's guest geek is Kevin Miller, an ISF video calibrator who just finished a great face-off of flat panel TVs, and he's here to give us the results. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, Scott. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. I was very interested to hear the results of this show, of the face-off, I mean. I'll be interested to hear the results of this show, too. But in any event, I just want to, before we start, I want to make sure everybody knows who is watching live at live.twit.tv or logged into the chat room at irc.twit.tv. Can post questions for Kevin as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. So, Kevin, this was the 8th annual flat panel shootout at Value Electronics in Scarsdale, New York, right?
That's exactly right.
So they've been doing this now for 8 years, obviously, and what led them to start doing this?
Robert Zahn, the owner of Value Electronics, is a rather passionate retailer, and he really just wants to get a handle on what the best flat panel TVs, the flagship and the best performing flat panel TVs are each year. I think that's really the motivation for it. It's for his customers, wanting to know as well. Other than that, I think that's really the main motivation, is to find out what is the very best.
And he does it, I'm sure, and you help him to do it without prejudice or bias. I mean, he might carry some of these brands and not others, but I'm sure what he really wants to know is what is the best you can buy.
Well, actually, yes, and he does carry everything. Everything on the wall he sells. So. But it is an unbiased thing, and from my perspective, I have to be. And my job is to put all these panels on a level playing field. I have a team of expert calibrators that work with me. We spend the better part of about 3 days setting all the panels up, getting to know each one of them. As you know, when you encounter a new TV and you work on it and you calibrate it and try and optimize its performance, every year things change a little bit. Something that was happening last year isn't happening. Something that wasn't happening this year is happening with it. Something that was doing well last year, it might not be doing so well this year. That doesn't happen, fortunately, as often as the other way around, where hopefully they're tending to fix issues that we identify, which in this year's shootout, one of the manufacturers actually did a spectacular job. Which we could talk about further in when we get to that. But that's, what I do for a living, if I can't be prejudiced or biased, and I don't sell any product or anything like that. I'm just all about performance. What's the best performing TV out there?
Right. It does make me wonder, though, if a retailer holds a shootout like this and they put 6 products up, which you did this time, 6 flat panels, all of which they sell. How is that? And the one that wins, obviously, is going to win, and people are going to go, "Wow, that's great." But what was the range of performance? I mean, how did the 6th place runner-up do, and how does that affect the sales of that one? I wonder.
Well, that's a very good question, a really good question, because this year we all felt that the quality of most of the contending panels was on a higher level than in previous years. However, with that said, there were a couple of panels that were at the tail end, 5 and 6, I would say, 4, 5, and 6 even. And it's a great question. I would assume that the lower rated panels are not going to sell all that well.
Yeah. Now, who was it who was in the audience here? You told me that there was a lot of people that are invited to this, and so are they simply customers or journalists or professionals in the industry? Who typically attends, and who attended this year? All
of the above. And I've been doing it 5 years now, and it's been that way every year. But the bulk of the audience is our consumers, are just regular consumers who come to see it. But there are a number of professionals, usually representatives from each manufacturer, although this year not every manufacturer was represented. And the first day on Saturday, a couple of members of the press showed up. And that's typical of any given year.
Okay, well, let's get into it then. Tell us which panels were being considered and under contention here.
All right. We had 3 plasma panels, Panasonic's flagship TCP65 VT50, Samsung's PN64 E8000, and LG's 60 PM9700.
So these were like 60 to 65 inches.
60, 64, and 65, respectively.
Right.
And we put those in the top row. If you look at the photograph, we put there were.
We can actually see a picture, of the setup here. If we can take a look at it, the setup in the room with a picture of you and in front of these 6 panels, with a little bit of the audience. If Bert can find it, well, let's keep going, and when he finds it, we'll show you.
And
so you put the panels in the upper row.
Yeah, and that was done on purpose. The bottom 3 were LED-based LCDs, and
here we go. There's the picture of it, by the way.
There you go. So the top 3 panels are plasmas. The bottom 3 are LED-based LCDs, and the reason we put those in the bottom was we didn't want any problems with vertical angle viewing, which, of course, if you're looking up, or you're looking down, or you're off to the left or the right, with LCD-based panels, colors and blacks will get washed out.
Right.
So, of course, we did have a horizontal viewing issue with those, and as we proceeded through the testing, we encouraged people that, to get up and get dead center viewing angle of any, whenever they were considering a vote or something like that on one of the LED panels. But on the bottom, all the way to the left, the smallest one is it's Panasonic's latest edge-lit LED panel. It's the TC-L 47WT50.
The 47-inch are somewhat smaller than the others.
Yes, and we're trying to get the 55-inch version, which is the biggest one that the company makes, but it was not available in time for the shootout, so we took the 47-inch thinking it would be representative of the larger panel. The one in the middle is directly below the Samsung Plasma, is the Samsung UN60ES8000, which is an edge-lit LED-based LCD panel. And then the one directly to the right of me, where you can clearly see NASA and the space launch, is the Elite Pro 60 X5 FD, which is a full array direct backlit LED panel. And actually, the reigning champ from last year. That was the first year, last year in 2011, the Elite actually won the shootout for the first time ever that an LED panel did. And so Elite has not come out with a new product, and they're keeping that in the lineup for the rest of 2012. So we thought that since it was the reigning champ, we would leave it there and bring all the new ones in up against it.
I think that's a great idea, particularly since it won last year. And reasonably so, because as our review indicated, as far as LCD or LED backlit LCDs are concerned, it really is the best performer we ever saw.
Very, very, very good performing unit, no question.
Also very expensive.
Indeed, yes. Extremely. 85, what was it? 8,000 for the 70-inch retail and 5,500 for the 60, I think.
I think so. 6,500 and 8,000, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And the Panasonic, I just wanted to make a quick mention that even though it was a little smaller, it's certainly larger than LCDs that Panasonic has made in the past. Panasonic has decided to move more into the LCD arena with larger panels, LED, edge-lit panels. I wondered, what do you think? It's probably only intuition or guesswork on your part as it is on mine. I hope Panasonic doesn't abandon its plasma business altogether in favor of LCD, because it might be, more people buy LCDs. We know this for sure, but Panasonic's also, really good in plasmas, and I hope they're not thinking about getting out of it.
I hope so. I hope so as well, and I doubt it. But I think that they're just looking at the handwriting on the wall, Scott. I mean, it's clear LCD is outselling plasma 20-1, and they're up until this year, effectively, they weren't in the market at all. I mean, I think the largest screen size they offered was 40 inches.
Right.
In order to be competitive, I think they don't have any choice but to get into the category. I don't think that means that they have to necessarily abandon plasma, and I certainly hope they won't, because they're at the top of the category right now. They make the best stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so now let's go to the test equipment and the things that you were using to do the measurements and the setup and so on. What kind of equipment were you using there?
A few different things. When it came to meters, I used my own meter as a Konica Minolta CS200 point-and-shoot device.
Same one I use. Yep.
Okay, so you know it well. It's considered one of the reference tools. It can basically measure any display technology accurately, very accurate.
Yep.
The other guys helping me were using Klein K10s. That were
somewhat less expensive than the Minolta.
Yeah, about half the price. I think the K10 is about $6,000 or $7,000 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they were profiled against Photo Research PR655 spectroradiometers, which is something you can actually you can teach a Klein a reference tool's accuracy, and you can get it within you can get it extremely close to the reference tool. So. Mm-hmm. HD signal generators, there were 2 video forges used by 2 of us, me included. One of the technicians was using an Acupel 4000, and I had a Quantum Data QD780 that was actually wired into the system for the event so that we could bring up test patterns quickly and easily from the generator. So that was what we used for that. Everything was
and we should say first of all that all of those particular models that we were talking about are test pattern generators, which are little boxes that have test patterns built into their ROM that are known as reference quality test patterns that against which you can judge things and calibrate things very safely and reliably. So I just want to make sure those are not products that a lot of people might recognize right off the bat.
No, of course not. They're not consumer products. They're test tools. All those signals, including the Blu-ray players that were used, were routed through a high-end key digital distribution amplifier so that we could feed signal in, of course, and then out to all of the displays.
And I assume you had HDMI cables of the same length and same type going to all the displays and so on?
Correct. And again, key digital, top-of-the-line key digital HDMI cable.
Excellent.
The Blu-ray players that we used, there were 3 of them. 2 Panasonics, I think BT110, BT220, and our reference player was the Oppo BD93.
Great player.
Yeah, it's an awesome player. It's widely recognized as the reference Blu-ray player on the market today.
Mm-hmm. And other than the signal generators, I know you also use some Blu-rays for test patterns and for reference material, real-world clips. What did you use there?
Absolutely. I mean, what we do is we go through the different video performance parameters, and we start by showing the audience test material for a couple of reasons. One is you want to prove to the audience that that everything is set correctly. So you'll show everybody things like black level test patterns, so that we can show them that the black level on each and every panel is set correctly. And I'll take one panel and I'll raise it and I'll make it wrong on purpose so that I can show them what's wrong and what's right. The test material, HD Basics, which is a very popular test Blu-ray, Spears and Munsell, which is also an awesome test disc, HQV, Silicon Optics made for a number of years a disc called HQV with a lot of really good test material on it. We use it mainly for motion resolution testing. And then there was some other actually homemade test material from a gentleman from Scotland who joined us, David McKenzie, who is from hdtvtest.com, a forum over in the UK. It's in Scotland, actually. But he does actually he authors DVDs for a living. So he had made some interesting motion patterns that revealed some things that, frankly, some of our other test material did not show. Really?
Oh, I'd love to see those.
Yeah, I would too, and I have to email him and ask him to send me a copy of the disc, and I'll see if I can't get you a copy as well.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. I'm always on the lookout for good test material, because there isn't one single disc that does it all, right? I mean,
absolutely not.
Certain discs have some things that you really like, and other discs have other things you really like, but there's no one disc that has everything, so I'm always on the lookout.
Yep, me too. And then, of course, we follow up all the test material with each different category of performance with a Blu-ray movie that, like, for example, when we're talking about contrast ratio, we put up something that goes back and forth between some fairly bright material and then real dark material so that you can get an idea of the contrast ratio of the displays. In this case, we were using mainly Watchmen, which, if you've ever seen the opening sequences of that movie, there's a couple of bright scenes in the beginning, and then it just is a black level torture test.
Wow, no, I don't know that one. I'll have to go get that one.
Oh, you should really check it out. Yeah, it's good material. You like it.
Excellent. What other? This is a good thing for all of our listeners and viewers as well. What other Blu-ray movies do you use for testing and for really sort of exercising the capabilities of these displays?
A number of other things we were using for color. I put in something very lush and rich, which is The Tourist. I don't know if you've seen that on Blu-ray or not, but it's extremely saturated, so it's real good for color. Then we used a couple of action films. Actually, primarily this year we were using MI4. And there's a trend in Hollywood, which I frankly don't like much, but it nonetheless is a trend that directors of action films are moving toward. And it's the use of this low luminance level of cyan or teal in a lot of movies. I mean, Transformers, X-Men. X-Men we actually used also a couple times, and Star Trek. They all have this 20 to 30% level of cyan in a number of scenes, and
So in other words, a lot of cyan.
Yeah, a lot of cyan. Really kind of weird, and skin tones and whatnot looks a little odd to me, but it's a mood. It's a style that Hollywood has kind of latched on for action films. And last year we discovered that one of the displays actually was not handling that level of cyan correctly, and it was blue. And it was a interesting thing because you would have never known it, except we were up against several other panels that were doing it correctly, and then all of a sudden this color comes up, and the one that's not doing it right sticks out pretty drastically.
Pretty easily, yeah.
Yeah.
Captain Kipper in the chat room mentions the Chronicles of Riddick is pretty dark too, and I agree. I like that one, to use that one as a dark test as well.
Absolutely.
Now,
The Dark Knight's another one. There's a lot of movies with lots of dark material in it.
Exactly. The Matrix is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Amen Ra in the chat room asks, do you guys get into the service menu to set up your panels, or do you stick with the stock TV, the user menu, essentially?
Well, it's a great question. I know an editor in the business, David Katzmeyer at CNET, refuses to go into service menus anymore. But frankly, I have very little need to get into a service menu anymore. And most all TVs today have advanced menus with everything that you need to calibrate a panel.
Yes, I found that too. It used to be you had to ask the manufacturer for the secret handshake to get into the service menu, but really no more.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think that they did that intentionally. I think that manufacturers ended up with some significant customer service issues over the years with people getting into service menus and tripping things that, did things that they were not intending to do. And, call up and say, my TV is broken. Can you help me? So it's a way of getting all of the things that calibrators need into a safe menu where nothing else can go wrong, other than you can make the picture look a little funny. And if you have a problem, you just go and hit reset and go back to where you started.
Right. Exactly.
So the answer is no. I mean, there's only one TV I can think. There's two TVs I can think of that there's any reason to go into a service mode today. One is the Samsungs, because you have to go in there in order to activate the Cal Day and Cal Night modes in the user menu, which is kind of nifty because you turn these things on by going into the service menu. Then you go out to the regular menu. You have two new modes to deal with. And then we create effectively a day mode, something significantly brighter than the night mode calibration, which is more for, controlled lighting, watching a movie at nighttime or what have you. So.
Right. So getting back to the shootout here, do you black out the room? I mean, is it totally light controlled?
Oh, absolutely. Not only is it totally light controlled, the front end of the room where the wall the panels are mounted on is completely painted black. The ceiling is all black. The sidewalls are black, about 3 feet coming out from where the panels are mounted. So, and yes, the windows are all completely blackened out. That's a must.
Right. Now, you told me that one of the participants this year was someone pretty amazing, the godfather of plasma.
Well, that's what a lot of people refer to him as. Some people think he actually invented the technology, which is not quite true, but it's close. Man's name is Dr. Larry Weber, and he studied under two professors at the University of Illinois in the 60s that developed the technology in the beginning. And then after that, he took it from there to basically what it is today. He holds a large number of patents for plasma technology. Things that, for example, in the beginning, plasma was such a power-hungry technology that it was just not commercially viable. He was the guy who figured out how to reduce the power consumption to the point that they could turn it into a commercially viable product. Mm-hmm. And so he started a company called Plasmaco that was ultimately bought out lock, stock, and barrel by Panasonic. And then he and his team went on to actually pioneer the very large screen sizes. Panasonic was the first to introduce a 60-inch color plasma in 1999, and that was basically his work. It was debuted at ABC's broadcast studios in Manhattan at a big press conference, which I actually happened to be at the time, so I remember it pretty well. It was really thrilling because he got up and talked about a number of his inventions, showed us some pictures, some very interesting pictures of early monochrome plasma panels, and talked a little bit about the difference between LCD and plasma display technology. And so we all learned quite a bit too, but I was honored by the fact that a man of this stature would find it interesting to come to an event like this. That was very flattering to me.
Yeah. A couple questions in the chat room. Lawn Dog is asking, what TVs are studio engineers using to make their color tweaks? They're not really using consumer products, right?
Well, yes and no. I do a fair amount of work for post-production facilities in Manhattan, and it's a mixture now. And there's a couple reasons for that. On the professional side, it's still mainly, it's all LCD, and they're very expensive. I mean, a 24-inch from any given manufacturer can be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000.
We're talking about professional reference monitors here.
Correct. But they also have a need for larger screen sizes, and a number of the places that I work with use larger plasma screens. So, you know, it's an interesting question because Panasonic Professional has been making large plasma screens for a number of years now, and up until just recently, they haven't been all that color accurate. And there's now a panel out there, a 65-inch panel that was designed for studio needs and is extremely color accurate. It's called the 65VX300 from Panasonic.
Oh, yeah, I think I might have seen that at CES or CEDIA recently.
Oh, yeah, CEDIA last year is where it was debuted.
That's it. That's it. F and Dunn in the chat room is asking about blacking out the room, as we were talking about a moment ago. He asks, if you black everything out, as they did, you're not getting real-world results, are you?
Well, that depends on how geeky you are, I guess. My room,
yeah. I mean, you're getting real results from my room, yeah.
Yeah, but that may be true, but at the same time, if you're going to, first of all, you're going to measure anything, it has to be black. You can't have any light in the room that's going to affect what your meters are, or what information your meters are giving back to you.
Right.
You know, yeah, it's valid. It depends. I mean, I have a theater that has complete light control, and when I sit down to watch a movie, my lights are off, and I have complete light control. So it depends upon what you're looking to do.
It's certainly important, very important, when you've got a front projector, which we're not really talking about today, but that's critical. With a flat panel, they put out enough light that they can compete with some ambient light, but I still prefer to watch them with the lights off and with good light control because you just get a better picture that way. Yeah,
I agree, and it's you know, I'm a major believer in the need for day and night picture modes for this very reason. I like to watch TV with some light on the room in the middle of the day without my window shades being down when I'm doing casual viewing, a ball game or what have you. And for that kind of environment, I need a brighter picture than I need when I have complete light control and I'm sitting back and I'm watching a Blu-ray movie. So. Right,
exactly. So as you say, the day and many TVs these days, just for people who might not catch this, have two calibration modes called day and night mode, sometimes called ISF day and night mode, named after the Imaging Science Foundation. And basically calibrators can go in and calibrate the day mode for when there's ambient light around, which would mean that it'd be brighter, generally, more light output, and then the night mode, which is when there's no ambient light, and then you can go and switch between them, and they're locked down, so you can't really go fiddle with them once the calibrator is finished with them. Which gives you two modes instantly to just switch between depending on whether you've got ambient light in the room or not.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, next we're going to talk about how you set them up, the testing methodology, and all that stuff. But if you'll hang on for just a second, I do want to thank our sponsor for this episode of Home Theater Geeks, which, of course, is Netflix. Now, Netflix offers you thousands of TV shows and movies available instantly by streaming to your TV or your game console, your Blu-ray player, your computer, your tablet, your iPhone, some Android phones and Windows phones as well. Just about any consumer electronics device these days has a Netflix app on it. And if you're a Netflix subscriber for one low monthly fee, you can stream anything in the Netflix library, which is growing all the time. I find it very convenient and very useful, especially for stuff that isn't readily available on disk. And, you know, you can even start streaming on one device and finish on another device. So it's the ultimate inconvenience, really. And it's really quite great, and I do recommend it from my own personal experience. Now, if you haven't tried it yet, and I'd be surprised if those of you who are watching the show haven't, but in the case that you haven't, I do recommend that you go to netflix.com/twit for your free 30-day trial. Give it a try. See if you like it. And please use that URL when you do. That's netflix.com/twit. And we thank Netflix very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks and the entire TWiT network. So, Kevin, let's start with your basic setup. Now, you set up the basic picture controls, got the brightness and contrast and color and everything right. Went through and calibrated the grayscale. Now, I want to make sure everybody understands that setting the basic picture controls, and there are 5 of them, called brightness, contrast, color, tint, and sharpness. Occasionally they have a little bit different names, but those are the most common. Anybody can do that with a disc like the Spears and Munsell or the HD Basics or even Disney Wow for those who feel like they're kind of not very experienced. That's a great intro to this whole subject. And that will get people a good part of the way towards an accurate picture, don't you think?
Absolutely. From out of the box to yes. I mean, just getting black and white level correctly with contrast and brightness is a huge improvement over what you typically will get up from out of the box settings.
Right, exactly.
So, no question.
But then, after that, you go the next step and do what's called a full grayscale calibration using these very expensive meters we were talking about earlier. And that's not something I would recommend people try unless they have training and expensive instrumentation.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. And today it goes even further than grayscale, as you know. Most TVs, if not all, have color management systems, so that we can actually tweak the primary and secondary color accuracy to the standards for high-definition television. In this case, what we did was we matched the light output to a specific number. It was 35-foot Lamberts for a dark room environment on all the panels. So they're all equally bright. There was no one panel that was brighter than another. At least not perceptibly. I mean, within a foot Lambert or two, we were at about 35-foot Lamberts.
Which is about right. I think that's close to the THX or SMPTE specification.
Yeah, in a studio environment, it's 29. You know, some people like 40. Somewhere between 30 and 35 for me is a good number. It's a comfortable number that you will not get eye strain from if you sit back and watch a movie for a couple of hours in a dark room. So I think 35 is a good number. So
and then you also did the grayscale and, as you said, the colorimetry, getting the red, green, blue, cyan, yellow, magenta, all 6 of those colors where they were supposed to be as well.
Correct. There are standards that have been developed by the standards committees that govern HDTV broadcast, and we are aiming to get the displays to adhere to those standards, and that's one of the areas that we would be working on, certainly. So, all of the technicians had signal generators fed into the system and worked on different displays and calibrated them to their absolute utmost capability. That was the whole idea. Now, of course, some of them are capable of being calibrated to a more accurate level than others.
I was going to ask you what was the range of divergence from the standard? We know that there's a standard, and then each of these TVs can come closer or not quite as close to it. Did they all get pretty close, or was there a wide range of divergence from the standard?
No, they all got pretty close, but a couple of them had some other problems, like, for example, the little WT50 Panasonic LED had a pretty major color decoding error. So that, what happens is if the color decoding is incorrect, you go and you attempt to set color and tint with a test pattern, and then you find that you look at, real material, and people's skin tones, for example, might look extremely saturated, too red. In fact, that's what happened in this case. But in terms of the grayscale and gamma and colorimetry, Most of them were pretty good. In fact, 4 of them were pretty well right on the mark.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was just one of them that had a pretty bad issue with color decoding, and then there was another panel that had really pretty dismal black level performance, which will.
This, to me, is one of the most important aspects of performance, of video display performance, is black level.
I could not agree more.
If the black, and by the way, some people in the chat room they said the word black level, take a drink.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
but it's very important. It's so critically important. If the black level's not really deep, not really low, the picture just doesn't pop. It doesn't work.
Well, exactly, and that's the reason for that is because it basically governs your contrast ratio. And as it turns out, exhaustive studies have been done, but contrast ratio is the single most important aspect of a picture that the human eye is latching onto. Okay?
Right.
So if your black is really high and your contrast is not good, you're not going to be too interested in watching that picture. That's not going to be an exciting picture for you to watch.
Right. So there were 4 areas you told me before the show that you tested for.
Mm-hmm. Contrast ratio, number 1, and we go we take the 4 most important performance parameters and we list them in descending order of importance. Contrast ratio, of course, we just said is number 1. It's the most important. So basically governed by black level. So then we'll talk about that topic first. The second one is actually color saturation, which is what I was talking about before with the Panasonic WT50 and the color decoding. Mm-hmm. And that is how much color is in the picture. Can you get color set correctly so that you have full color resolution and full color saturation? Or in this case, not. And if not, you end up having to take the color control down in order to make things like people's skin tones and just color color of certain objects to make it look natural. You actually have to drop the color down significantly. And unfortunately, you lose color resolution when you do that. That's number 2. Number 3, you named it, is colorimetry. And colorimetry encompasses the first one, the one above it, which is color saturation or color decoding. It also encompasses grayscale tracking. How well does the display track a grayscale from a low luminance level, from, let's say, black, which is 0, all the way up to peak white, which is 100, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. Ideally, there's a reference that we set called D65 or 6500 kelvins, which some people may have read about in magazines. And the display should be able to do that at every level of gray from 0 to 100, ideally. Of course, ideal is one thing and reality is
And in fact, before we move on to number 4, I just wanted to quickly show everybody the reverse gray ramps pattern, which if Bert can find that and pull it up, is a great pattern to, once you've set the grayscale, once you've calibrated the grayscale, which you need equipment and training to do, but then you can look at this pattern right here and you can see how well it works.
And if that looks blue, that means your computer screen needs to be calibrated.
But when you're looking at
that's a great pattern because it gives you a view of the entire grayscale from black to a peak white, reversed in times 2. In fact, now there was one other element to that colorimetry category, and that is what we were talking about earlier, which was the color gamut or the primary and secondary color accuracy: red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And then finally, the last one is resolution. Now, when I learned this many years ago, I was kind of surprised. I was always thinking how important resolution was, but the fact of the matter is it's not as important as the 3 other categories by quite a bit. You can have displays with half the resolution, and if they're doing everything else right, can produce a better picture than displays that don't do everything else as well.
Well, plus the other issue there is when you're watching a movie, movies are shot at 24 frames per second. And there's an awful lot of blur that occurs simply because of that frame rate, and there's nothing you can do to fix that.
Well, video processing, there is a way to make it smooth, and that is to do, if you process the video to a multiple of 24 and you do the job correctly, and some displays do and some don't, you can get and end up with a very nice smooth picture. That's one of the, it's a very, how do I say it? I think it's one of maybe the more esoteric and least important of the performance parameters of what we do today, but
right.
If you can get it, then great. Of course, every little bit counts, right?
Right, exactly right. Okay, so you looked at these 4 different performance categories, and you basically took measurements on all of these things, and we actually have one screen. By the way, we didn't mention that the measurement software that you used was a program called CalMan from SpectraCal.
That's correct.
And I've had a couple of SpectraCal guys on the show in the past, and we use that too in our review process. And you were fortunate enough to have the next generation of CalMan, a beta version, at your disposal. Did it work okay?
Yeah, it worked great. And in fact, it was very timely because of that. Remember that cyan tracking issue that I was talking about for one of the displays had last year, where we saw that it was not handling cyan correctly at low luminance levels.
Right.
That prompted me to want to be able to actually measure color tracking, all the color, all the primaries and all the secondaries. I want to be able to measure them from low luminance levels up to high ones, because when you're doing color correction, you're typically just shooting 75% luminance level of these colors, and then you're tweaking that color to the reference or as close as you can get it. But as it turns out, a lot's going on in all different luminance levels in video pictures, and if the display is not tracking it correctly or close to correctly at different levels of luminance for those colors, then you will be able to see problems. So it was really good that SpectraCal actually had this available to me, and you have the charts that I sent you. We mentioned put them up.
Let's take a look at each one. Let's start with the Panasonic TC-P65VT50, which is their flagship plasma, and that should be the file name there, Burke, that shows the color tracking that was measured by the CalMan software. Here it is. So, Kevin, give us a quick rundown of what we're seeing here.
Okay, well, if you look at the boxes, each color has 5 boxes, because the software at this point can measure 5 different luminance levels. And they start near the center of the screen at 20% and then move up towards the edges of the pattern, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And the object and the reference, of course, is the center of those white squares, right?
That's within. Okay, so we're looking at this weird multicolored horseshoe-like thing, which is called the CIE diagram. Right. And if you can see, there are a series of dots that go out from the center out towards the different color points. There's a green one at the top and a yellow one sort of in the upper right, and the red one in the lower right, magenta near the bottom, blue at the lower left, and cyan, the color we've been talking about, on the left of that triangle. Now you see the brighter triangle there within that horseshoe shape. That is the range of colors that a TV is supposed to be able to reproduce. The entire horseshoe is the range of colors that the human eye can perceive. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands where we're at here. This is getting very geeky, excellent. But after all, this is Home Theater Geeks, so let's keep going.
Excellent explanation, Scott. And you also picked that was the best of the lot in terms of color tracking. If you look,
we started with the best. Okay,
you did, yeah. Which I'm glad you did, in fact, because you could see that just about every dot was in the box, and that
right.
That is not the case with the other files. If you take a look.
Well, let's one more indicator that this is the best is if you look. Burke, if you can put that back up. The other boxes to the right of the CIE diagram show little bars. And the smaller those bars, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen this version of Calman yet, but if I'm guessing correctly, the smaller those bars, the more accurate the display.
Absolutely. That's what's called delta E, or it's basically a graph that shows you the percentage of error in each color.
Right.
So the smaller that bar, the smaller the error.
So we see very small errors here.
And if you see the green bar that's going horizontally across all 5 of those bars, that green line.
Oh, the green line, yeah.
That's a 3% mark, and it's generally agreed that anything below a 3% error is invisible to the human eye.
Right. So these errors are all invisible to the human eye on the Panasonic.
Pretty much. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's take a look then at the Samsung PN64E8000, which is their flagship plasma for this year, for 2012. And we will take a look and see how it did in the color tracking test, which again is you have to perform with pretty expensive meters and this Calman software and so on. But it should give us an idea. Well, it looked like it did pretty good, too.
Yeah, it did. If you look real closely at red, it had some issues with red. And in fact, we picked up on one scene in one movie where we thought we could see it relative to the Panasonic anyway. But that's pretty minor. It had a little bit of an issue with luminance. It looks like at 20, 40, 60%. So sort of in the middle.
It had a little more error at those levels.
Yes, correct.
Right. Okay, let's take a look at the LG 60 PM9700 next, which is the third of the 3 plasmas. And let's see how well it did with color tracking. I don't know about. I'm sure you feel the same, Kevin. I just love looking at these charts.
Well, yeah. This one in particular, and this is like one of many sequences of tests in that software. I didn't get a chance to look at the rest of it, so I'm pretty intrigued. Yeah. Version 5 looks like it's going to be very, very useful.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at green, I could see 80 is actually near the 60 box. So this one's having some issues with green tracking. Yellow looks to be off as well.
Yeah, Burke, if you zoom way in here, you'll be able to see where the dots are compared to where they're supposed to be.
That's great. Right there. Perfect.
So green had a little bit of error.
Yeah. Yellow is shifted off to the right, which would be a hue thing. So it looks like the very brighter boxes, 80 and 100 of yellow, are sort of heading towards red. Green is sort of heading towards yellow, so greens are a little bit yellowish. So yeah, there's actually some significant tracking errors there, even at the level where it should be accurate. 75 or 80 is some of the colors have some real issues there.
Okay, let's take a look at the 3 LCDs then, starting with the Samsung UN60ES8000, which again is the flagship LCD, LED edge-lit, as almost all Samsung LCD TVs are these days. Did you know that their entry-level LCDs are LED backlit, not edge-lit?
No, my understanding is that they don't make any more direct array.
Well, they do. The 2012, the EH series is direct array, but it doesn't have local dimming. That's the difference. But it does have LEDs behind the panel rather than on the edges. Okay, here's the Samsung. Here's the Samsung flagship LED LCD TV. And those errors look pretty good. Pretty low, I should say.
They are fairly low.
Yeah, next, we'll take a quick look at the Panasonic TCL47WT50, which is their small LCD TV from Panasonic. And you said that had some problems.
Yeah, it did, specifically color decoding issues.
Okay, which we should be able to see here. There it is.
Yeah, it's got some color.
Look at that.
Yeah, look at cyan. Look at blue. Actually, look at magenta, red, green, actually every color has some pretty serious tracking problems.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah,
those little dots are not in the boxes where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Okay, so there we had a few problems. And finally, let's take a look at the Sharp Elite Pro 60X5 FD, last year's winner, and certainly the best LED LCD TV on the market today, I would say, without question.
Yeah, well, in fact, it turns out it was this year's runner-up. It was voted. And by the way, back to you had asked about, Robert and putting these panels up and all. The audience are the people who actually vote and determine this. It's not us.
I was going to ask you how they voted and how you came up with the rankings. Who won and who was second place and so on and so forth.
Well, simply it's the 4 categories we're talking about. We have them vote from 1 to 10 on each category, and then you just tabulate the numbers and see which one is the highest overall. And so it is the audience that ultimately picks the winner and the runner-up, etc. In this case, but we also publish the experts' votes, all the calibrators, myself and the calibrators. Of course, Robert and the people affiliated with his store do not vote for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But those two votes get put side by side. The experts don't get mixed in with the audience, but 7 out of 8 years, including this year, the audience and the experts concurred on the winner. So,
can we?
Year, in fact, was the only year that didn't happen.
Oh, interesting. Okay, here's the Sharp, and wow, it actually has some significant errors, doesn't it?
Well, particularly when you look at cyan, yeah. And green also, which was something that we had not picked up on, but yes, it does.
Huh. That's very
Red
interesting.
Is reasonable. Magenta is reasonable. Yellow is pretty
Look
good.
At that cyan. Burke's pointing to it now.
Yeah,
that's way off. Way towards blue.
That's right. That's exactly it. And that's visible in a lot of program material nowadays, as I was saying.
Yeah, wow. Okay, well, listen, we only have a couple minutes left, so, and now the envelope, please. Who won?
The Panasonic VT51.
Okay, that came out on top, number 1.
Yep, everybody, including the experts, voted that. Number 2 was the Elite Pro 60. Third was the Samsung E8000 Plasma. So
the two of the plasmas and one of the LCDs came out in the top 3.
Correct.
And then how about then how did it shake out after that?
4, 5, and 6. 4 was the LG Plasma. 5 was the Samsung UN Edgelit LED, and last place was the Panasonic WT50.
Yep. Well, I might have expected something along those lines. The plasmas did pretty well, generally speaking, didn't they?
Yeah, and they have 7 out of the 8 years. A plasma has won. So,
well, it's fabulous. This is a great project that you do, and I'm really, really pleased to know about it and to hear the results this year. Undoubtedly, it'll happen next year as well, and we'll get the 2013 sets in there, and who knows? Maybe I'll come out. Maybe I'll come out.
Right. As a matter of fact, we may do one. Robert is talking about doing one in the fall if the OLEDs from LG and Samsung are available before the end of the year. We may do another one in 2012.
Oh, wouldn't that be fabulous to put those OLEDs up?
Yeah, we would pit the two 55-inch OLEDs up against the top 3 that won 1, 2, and 3 of this event. That was the idea.
Right. The LG OLED is being introduced at the Cannes Film Festival even as we speak.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
So it should now. I was told that it might come out as early as June or something in time for the Olympics. But then on TNT today, the show just that happens earlier in the day, they said that it might not be out till the second half of the year. So we still don't really know.
Right. Yeah. It's so new that whatever they say, you've got to take with a grain of salt because you never know. It could get postponed.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, fantastic. Great job, Kevin. I thank you so much for being here and explaining all of this Very geeky stuff for us. I know that I certainly enjoy it and appreciate it, and I know our audience does too. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Good. You bet.
Right.
You can read more of Kevin's stuff, the results from this test, in much more detail at isftv.com and tweaktv.com. I believe that the information will also be on valueelectronics.com, the website of the retailer that hosted this event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
Great.
actually going to publish. I've written the piece, and we're working on getting it put up on Tweak TV right now. So that'll be
Great.
up within probably 24 to 48 hours, I would say. With,
Fantastic.
All of the data as well for anybody who's interested in the measurements.
Great. And anybody in the New York area, if you want to attend the next one, you might contact Value Electronics in Scarsdale and see if you can snag a seat. So again, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.
All right.
My online home, of course, is hometheater.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at @HTGeekScott. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Ron Williams, a cinema industry consultant with some very interesting survey and test results regarding 3D and 4K. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that, and I sure hope you'll join me at that time. Until then, geek out.